The first thing I always hear is the sea. Not the gentle kind that kisses shores, but the deep, growling breath of the black ocean. An endless, living thing that never truly sleeps. My name is Edrin Vale. I am the youngest sailor aboard the pirate ship Crimson Widow, and this is how one of my days begins. The deck is cold beneath my bare feet as I step out from below. The sky above us is painted in bruised purples and dying golds. Sunrise in cursed waters always looks like the sky is bleeding. The Widow creaks like an old beast stretching awake. Around me the crew moves like shadows. Iron Hook Mara sharpening her twin blades. Old Fenric mumbling to the wind. Captain Blackthorn standing at the helm, eyes locked on the horizon as if staring down fate itself. And me? I carry water barrels. I scrub blood from planks. I listen more than I speak. But today, something is wrong. The sea is too still. Even the waves seem afraid. A black mist crawls across the water, rolling toward us like a slow tide of ghosts. The wind dies. Captain Blackthorn raises one gloved hand. "Drop sails! Quiet!" The entire ship obeys. In these waters, silence means danger. I grip the railing, heart pounding. Then we hear it. A bell. Not from our ship, but from beneath the ocean. Dong! Every pirate knows that sound. The grave tide bell, a myth whispered in taverns, a signal that something ancient is rising. Suddenly the water ahead begins to bubble, not gently, violently. A shape breaks the surface, wood, rotting sails. A ship, half dead, half alive, pulled upward by black, dripping chains. A ghost ship. Its name is burned into the hull. The Sable King. Fenric whispers, "We should run." But Captain Blackthorn smiles. A ghost ship carries ghost gold. And that is how my ordinary day becomes legend. The moment the Sable King fully breached the surface, the air turned cold. Not wind cold, grave cold. Frost crawled across the Widow's cannons. Breath came out of every pirate's mouth in pale clouds. Even the sea seemed to shrink away from the thing floating before us. The ghost ship was enormous, twice the size of the Crimson Widow. Its sails were torn like the wings of dead birds, yet they still caught a wind that didn't exist. Dark chains wrapped around its hull, sinking into the black water as if something below was holding it in place. And then, figures appeared on its deck. Not men. Not anymore. Their bodies were gray and cracked like old stone. Their eyes burned with green fire. Every one of them wore the rusted remains of Royal Navy armor. "The King's dead crew," Iron Hook Mara muttered. "Spirits bound to his ship." Captain Blackthorn's voice cut through the fear. "Load the cannons. We're going in." My heart slammed into my ribs. "Captain, you mean—" "Board them." A laugh rippled through the crew, nervous, hungry, mad. That's what pirates do. We don't run from legends. We steal from them. The Widow turned, sails snapping open as invisible wind caught them. We surged forward. The Sable King loomed closer, its hull dripping black water like blood. Then the bell rang again. Dong! The ghost crew moved. They raised weapons, cutlasses, spears, rifles from centuries past, and with a roar that sounded like 1,000 drowning voices, they fired. Green fire exploded across the air. The Widow shuddered as ghost cannonballs tore into her side. Wood splintered, men screamed. I was thrown to the deck. When I looked up, flames were licking the mast. Fenric lay unmoving beside me. I had never been in real battle before. This was not training. This was death trying to claim us. Captain Blackthorn drew his sword. "All hands, for gold and glory!" Grappling hooks flew, the ships slammed together, boarding planks crashed down, and before I could think, I was running into a nightmare. The deck of the Sable King was cold as a tomb. Ghost sailors rushed us, blades glowing with green fire. I barely raised my dagger in time as one lunged. Steel met spirit. The impact sent lightning through my arm. I stabbed again, harder. The ghost screamed, dissolving into ash. I was shaking. I had just killed something that was already dead. And then I saw something far worse. At the center of the ghost ship stood a throne made of bones and coral, and sitting upon it, a tall, armored figure with glowing eyes. The Ghost King. He turned his head slowly toward me and smiled. The moment the Ghost King looked at me, the world went silent. Not quiet, empty. The screams of pirates, the crash of steel, even the roar of the sea vanished. All that remained was his burning green gaze. I couldn't move. His armor was ancient, carved with runes that glowed like dying stars. A crown of black iron sat upon his skull, fused to bone. Chains hung from his shoulders, whispering as if they were alive. "You," his voice echoed inside my head, not through my ears. "Not one of the damned. Not one of the living." I stumbled backward. "What are you?" I whispered. "I am King Varkal, sovereign of the drowned empire," he said. "And you, child of flesh, do not belong on my ship." Around us, pirates and ghosts clashed like storms colliding, but he ignored them. His attention was on me. Why me? A ghost lunged at me from behind. Before I could react, Varkal raised one hand. The spirit froze midair, then shattered into dust. "Leave him," the king commanded. Fear turned into something worse. Curiosity. "You could have killed me," I said. "Yes," he replied, "but I will not." He rose from his throne. Every plank beneath him blackened as he walked. "You carry something," Varkal said. "Something lost to this world." My chest burned. Beneath my shirt, hidden by a leather cord, was a small, cracked crystal, a trinket my mother gave me before she died. I never knew what it was. "Give it to me," the Ghost King said softly. "No," I answered. A smile slowly spread across his skeletal face. "So the blood remembers." The air exploded. Captain Blackthorn smashed into the throne chamber, cutting through two ghost guards in a blur of steel and fury. "Hands off my crew, corpse!" he roared. The Ghost King turned. "Blackthorn," he said calmly, "still stealing what you do not understand." The captain froze. "You know me?" "Once," Varkal replied. "You were my executioner." Silence fell between them. "What?" I whispered. Blackthorn's face was pale. "I killed him," the captain said. 100 years ago. I watched him die. "And yet," the Ghost King said, spreading his arms, "here I stand." The ship shook violently. The sea below began to churn. "This vessel is awakening," Varkal said, "and when it rises fully, the Black Ocean will drown every kingdom you know." He looked back at me. Unless you choose otherwise. The crystal at my chest burned like fire. I had no idea what I was, but something ancient had just recognized me. The crystal burned so hot against my chest that I thought it would melt through my skin. I ripped it from under my shirt and held it out in front of me. The tiny, cracked gem glowed with a pale blue light, nothing like the sickly green of the Ghost King's power. Varkal stepped back. "The Tideheart," he whispered. "So it still lives." Captain Blackthorn stared at it. "You never told me you had that, kid." "I didn't know what it was," I said. "My mother gave it to me. She said it would keep me safe." Varkal laughed, a hollow, echoing sound. "It is no charm," he said. "It is the last fragment of the ocean's soul. With it, one can command the sea itself, or awaken what sleeps beneath it." The ship trembled again. From far below, something enormous stirred. "What do you want from me?" I demanded. Varkal's burning eyes softened just for a moment. "My empire was betrayed. My people were drowned. I was cursed to rule a dead kingdom beneath the waves. But the Tideheart can break that curse, or seal it forever." A ghostly wave crashed against the hull. "You are of my blood," he said. "The Tideheart only answers my line." Captain Blackthorn swore. "Your blood? That means my mother?" I whispered. Varkal nodded slowly. "She fled, hid you among the living, and now fate has dragged you back to me." Steel rang behind us. Pirates and ghosts were still dying by the dozens. "I won't help you destroy the world," I said. "And I do not wish to," Varkal replied. "I wish to end this endless drowning." He held out his skeletal hand. "Join me. Command the Tideheart. Free the black ocean." The deck split open as a massive tentacle burst from the water below. A creature older than history was rising. Captain Blackthorn grabbed my arm. "Edrin, listen to me. If that thing wakes fully, everything dies." I looked between them. A pirate captain who had given me a home, and a ghost king who shared my blood. The Tideheart pulsed in my hand. The sea was waiting for my choice. The ocean screamed, not in sound, but in force. Waves rose like mountains, smashing into both ships as the creature beneath the water pushed upward. The tentacle that had burst through the deck was only one of many. Black, armored, covered in glowing runes older than any kingdom. "The Leviathan," Fenrit gasped somewhere behind us. "It's real." The Crimson Widow and the Sable King were being pulled together, trapped by the whirlpool forming beneath them. I felt the Tideheart throb in my palm, sinking with the rhythm of the sea. Varkal knelt before me. "Command it," he said. "You are the bridge between the living and the drowned." Captain Blackthorn tightened his grip on his sword. "Kid, you don't have to listen to him. You're one of us." I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. "I never wanted to be special," I said. "I just wanted to survive." The Leviathan roared, a sound that shattered the sky. I closed my eyes. And I chose. I pressed the Tideheart to my chest. Light exploded outward. Not green, not black, but a blinding blue like lightning trapped in water. The sea froze for a single heartbeat. Then I spoke words I did not know I knew. "By tide and blood, I bind thee." The Leviathan stopped rising. The tentacles trembled. Varkal's eyes widened. You didn't free it. You commanded it. The ocean bent to my will. Waves flattened. The whirlpool unraveled. The ghostly flames flickered. I won't let the world drown, I said. And I won't let you stay cursed either. I turned to Varkal. End this, or I will. For the first time in a century, the Ghost King looked afraid. Slowly, he removed his crown. If this is the will of my blood, he said softly, then so be it. He placed the crown at my feet. Green fire left his eyes, his body cracked and began to fade. The ghost crew screamed as their chains dissolved, their souls finally released. The Sable King began to sink. Captain Blackthorn pulled me back as the ship slipped into the deep, taking the cursed empire with it. Silence fell. The sea was calm. I stood on the deck of the Widow, soaked and trembling, holding a crown older than history. I was no longer just a cabin boy. I was something the ocean remembered. The storm was gone. Where moments ago the sea had been tearing itself apart, now it lay smooth and dark like polished glass. The Crimson Widow drifted gently, the only ship left in a vast, empty ocean. The Sable King had vanished beneath the waves, along with King Varkal, his cursed empire, and a century of drowned souls. No cheers followed. Even pirates know when they've witnessed something too big for celebration. I stood at the rail, staring into the water, the black iron crown heavy in my hands. It was cold, but it no longer whispered. Captain Blackthorn approached me slowly. You saved us, he said. I don't feel like a hero, I replied. I feel hollow. That's the price of touching legends. The Tideheart around my neck glowed faintly, no longer burning, but alive, like a quiet heartbeat. The crew gathered around. Ironhook Mara knelt. So it's true, she said. The sea chose you. I didn't ask it to. None of us do. Blackthorn rested a hand on my shoulder. You can't go back to being just a deckhand kid. The oceans won't let you. Far away, thunder rolled. Not from a storm, but from something ancient acknowledging a new ruler. What am I now? I asked. Captain Blackthorn smiled grimly. A Tidebearer. A pirate who can command the sea itself. The Widow's sails suddenly caught a wind that no one could feel. The ship turned on its own, pointing toward the far horizon where dark clouds waited. The ocean has more ghosts, Blackthorn said. And now, it knows your name. I looked out over the endless water. Somewhere below, monsters slept. Somewhere ahead, empires feared. And somewhere inside me, the tide was rising. This was not the end of my day. It was the beginning of a legend. The wind changed, not gently, violently. The Crimson Widow lurched as if something massive had just inhaled beneath her hull. The sea, moments ago calm, began to swirl in slow, deliberate circles. I felt it before anyone else. A pull in my chest. The Tideheart pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat waking from sleep. Captain Blackthorn turned to me. You feel it too, don't you? Yes, I whispered. Something is coming. From the crow's nest, a lookout screamed, Black water to the east! The horizon darkened, not with clouds, but with a moving stain spreading across the sea. The water there was thicker, heavier, as if ink had been poured into the ocean. And from that darkness, a ship emerged. Its hull was carved with screaming faces. Its sails were stitched from skin and shadow. Chains dragged behind it, rattling like bones. Iron Hook Mara spat. By the abyss! That's a reaver ship! I had heard of them in taverns, vessels captained by warlords who hunted both pirates and kingdoms, selling souls to sea demons in exchange for power. Captain Blackthorn drew his sword. They don't run. They don't negotiate. They kill everything. The reaver ship turned toward us. A horn blew, deep and monstrous. Figures appeared on its deck, towering warriors in black armor, their eyes glowing red through their helmets. And at their center stood a tall figure holding a trident that dripped blood into the sea. "The Reaver Lord," Mara whispered. "Karzul the Drowned." The Tideheart burned. He was tied to the ocean, but in a twisted way. Karzul raised his trident. "Tidebearer," his voice boomed across the waves. "I smell the Ghost King's death on you." Every pirate on the Widow froze. "You have taken what belongs to the deep," he continued, "and now I will take your head." Waves rose around his ship like living walls. I stepped forward. For the first time in my life, I did not feel small. "I don't belong to you," I said, "and neither does the sea." The water beneath the Crimson Widow answered. It lifted us, slowly, like a giant hand. The crew gasped as our ship rose above the waves, hovering on a pillar of swirling ocean. Captain Blackthorn laughed. "Well, I'll be damned." Karzul snarled. "Then come, little god," he said. "Let us see whose tide is stronger." The sea roared, and my first true battle as the Tidebearer began. The sea rose like a living wall beneath the Crimson Widow, lifting us higher and higher until we towered above the waves like a floating fortress. Below us, the reaver ship plowed forward through the rising water, cutting through it with unnatural strength. Karzul stood at its prow, trident glowing with dark red light. "Bring him down," Captain Blackthorn shouted. Cannons roared. Iron balls screamed through the air and slammed into the reaver ship. But instead of splintering, its hull absorbed the impact, dark liquid sealing the wounds like living flesh. Karzul laughed. "My ship feeds on pain." He raised his trident and stabbed it into the deck. The ocean answered. A colossal wave rose behind the reaver ship and hurled itself at us like a mountain. "Edrin!" Blackthorn yelled. I closed my eyes and reached for the Tideheart. I didn't command. I listened. The sea whispered back. I thrust my hand forward. The wave split in two, crashing harmlessly past the Widow on either side. The crew erupted in shocked cheers. Karzul's smile vanished. "So, you truly are chosen." The Reaver Lord leapt into the air, landing on the surface of the water as if it were solid ground. With every step, the sea blackened beneath his feet. He ran straight toward us. I felt his power pulling against mine like two storms colliding. "Boarders!" Iron Hook Mara shouted. Weaver warriors launched themselves from their ship, crashing onto our deck in waves of steel and fury. The Widow became a battlefield. Blades clashed, blood splashed, ghostly fire met living steel. I drew my dagger, heart pounding. A reaver lunged at me. I barely blocked, the impact rattling my bones. I wasn't a warrior, but I was something else now. I slammed my foot onto the deck. The wood exploded as seawater surged upward, forming a serpent that wrapped around the reaver and crushed him before dissolving back into the planks. I stared at my own hands. I had done that. Karzul reached the side of our ship. He looked up at me, eyes burning. "You wield the tide like a child swinging a sword," he snarled. "Let me show you how a true master drowns worlds." The ocean beneath us began to spiral. A massive whirlpool formed, pulling both ships toward a black, endless depth. The Widow started to slide. "Edrin!" Blackthorn shouted. "We're losing her!" Karzul raised his trident, preparing to strike a final blow. And I realized, if I didn't stop him now, the sea would swallow us all. The world was spinning. The whirlpool beneath us widened into a massive, roaring abyss. Water poured downward like a waterfall into nothingness. Both ships slid closer to its center, dragged by a force that even the sea itself seemed afraid of. Karzul stood unmoved, planted on the raging water as if it were solid ground. "This is the eye of the deep," he shouted. "A place where even gods drown." Captain Blackthorn struggled to keep his footing. "Edrin, we can't outrun this!" I felt the Tideheart hammering in my chest, not with fear, with urgency. The sea was screaming for balance. I stepped to the edge of the deck, staring into the spiraling abyss. "Karzul!" I shouted. "You don't control the ocean. You're just poisoning it." He snarled. "The sea only respects power." "Then feel it." I raised both hands. Instead of forcing the tide, I let it flow through me. The roar of the whirlpool faded in my ears, replaced by something vast and ancient, a presence older than storms, older than monsters. The true ocean. The water around the Widow began to glow with pale blue light. The spinning current slowed, fighting against Karzul's dark magic. Karzul staggered. "No, this is impossible." "You're not its master," I said. "You're its wound." The sea surged upward in towering columns, slamming into the reaver ship. Its screaming hull cracked, unable to heal this time. Karzul roared in fury and leapt toward me, trident raised high. "Then I'll tear the Tideheart from your corpse." He was fast, too fast. At the last second, Captain Blackthorn threw his sword. The blade struck Karzul in the chest, slowing him just long enough. I clenched my fist. The ocean obeyed. A massive hand of water rose from the whirlpool and crushed around the reaver lord, dragging him down toward the abyss. Karzul screamed as the deep claimed him. "This isn't over, Tidebearer!" Then he was gone. The whirlpool collapsed. The sea rushed back into place, calm returning like a held breath finally released. The reaver ship broke apart and sank into the depths. The Crimson Widow drifted free. Silence fell. The crew stared at me in awe and fear. Captain Blackthorn walked over, gripping my shoulder. "You just beat a sea god, kid." I shook my head. "I didn't beat him. I let the ocean decide." The Tideheart pulsed softly. Somewhere in the deep, something ancient had just been silenced. But I knew. Others would hear the call. Night fell slowly after the battle, as if the sky itself needed time to recover. The Crimson Widow drifted across a dark, mirror-smooth ocean. No stars reflected in it, only shadows, deep and endless. The crew was quiet, not from fear, from reverence. They watched me from a distance now, whispering my name like it was something sacred or cursed. Edrin Vale, the Tidebearer. Captain Blackthorn stood beside me at the rail. "You know what you've done, right?" "I stopped a monster." "You announced yourself to the entire Black Ocean," he said. Every sea witch, every leviathan, every cursed king, they felt that power. A cold shiver ran through me. I didn't want to start a war. Blackthorn smiled grimly. You didn't. The ocean did. Far away, thunder rolled across a clear sky, not from clouds, from something answering. Suddenly, the water beside the widow glowed. Shapes moved beneath the surface, huge, elegant silhouettes swimming in slow, deliberate circles. Voices filled my mind, not words, names, places, warnings. I grabbed the railing as visions flashed through me. A burning port city swallowed by waves, a black crown rising from the deep, a young woman standing on a storm-torn shore, holding a Tideheart like mine. What's happening to me? I whispered. You're becoming what the ocean needs, Blackthorn said. A bridge between worlds. The glow beneath the ship faded, but something had changed. The Tideheart was no longer just a relic. It was awakening, and it was calling others. I looked out over the endless sea, knowing deep down that my life as a simple pirate was over. The black ocean had chosen me, and now it was time to see why. 3 days after the fall of Karzul, the ocean brought us a message. Not in words, in fire. The horizon burned red as we approached a distant coastline, a jagged land of black stone cliffs and twisted trees. Storm clouds churned above it, lightning crawling through them like blowing veins. Storm shore, Fenric muttered. No one goes there unless they want to disappear. The Tideheart throbbed violently against my chest. She's here, I whispered. Captain Blackthorn frowned. Who? I don't know, but I've seen her. As we drew closer, waves began to push the Crimson Widow forward, guiding us toward a narrow inlet hidden between towering cliffs. On the shore, someone was waiting. A young woman stood alone on the rocks, cloak whipping violently in the wind. Blue light pulsed from the crystal in her hand, the same pale glow as my Tideheart. Another bearer. The moment our ship anchored, she looked straight at me. Not surprised, not afraid. About time, she called out. I was starting to think the sea chose the wrong idiot. The crew gasped. I stepped onto the wet stones, heart racing. Who are you? I asked. She smiled, a dangerous, knowing smile. My name is Lyra Stormborn, she said. And if you can command the tides? Lightning struck behind her, illuminating her silhouette. Then you're not the only one anymore. The ground shook. Something massive moved beneath the water, and the storm above us began to spiral. The storm did not wait. The moment Lyra Stormborn stepped toward me, the sky cracked open. Thunder rolled across Storm Shore like a war drum. Waves exploded against the cliffs, spraying mist over both of us. 2 Tidehearts, 2 chosen by the ocean. The sea didn't know which one to follow. Lyra's crystal glowed brighter. So, she said, circling me slowly, boots splashing in the shallow water. You're the boy who killed a ghost king and drowned Karzul. I didn't kill them, I replied. The ocean did. She laughed. That's what power always says. The ground beneath us began to tremble. A shape rose beneath the waves, massive, serpentine, covered in glowing blue scars. A tide serpent. Captain Blackthorn shouted from the ship. Edrin, Lyra, whatever this is, finish it fast. The serpent burst from the water, jaws wide enough to swallow the widow's mast. Lyra raised her hand. I raised mine. The sea split. Two waves, one mine, one hers, slammed into the monster from opposite sides. It screamed as water crushed it, dragged it back beneath the surface. Silence returned. Lyra stared at me. "So it's true," she said quietly. "The tide listens to you. It listens to you, too." She stepped closer. "That's the problem." The wind suddenly died. "You don't know what's coming," Lyra whispered. "The deep court is waking. Ancient Tidebearers, sea gods. They don't want balance. They want dominion." "And you?" I asked. Her eyes darkened. "I plan to break them all." Lightning flashed. Somewhere far beneath the waves, something colossal turned in its sleep. The War of the Tides had begun. The storm over Stormshore was no longer weather. It was will. The wind did not blow. It watched. Lyra and I stood side by side on the black rocks, our two Tidehearts glowing in the dark. The sea below us churned uneasily, caught between two masters. Lyra spoke quietly. "The deep court is waking." The clouds split. Within the thunderheads, enormous silhouettes moved. Not ships, not monsters, but something far older. Shapes made of living storm and abyss. "The first Tidebearers," Lyra whispered. "They ruled the ocean before kingdoms ever existed." The water beneath us turned black and still. A voice rose from the depths, vast and cold. "New vessels of the tide. You stand on borrowed power." The Crimson Widow rocked violently as waves curled around her hull. Captain Blackthorn shouted, "Whatever that is, it's not friendly." Lyra clenched her fist. "They want the Tideheart. They want to own the sea again." I felt the ocean pulse beneath my feet. "It doesn't belong to them." The voice returned, louder now. "Then drown with it." The sea began to rise, and far beneath the waves, something ancient began to move. The ocean split open, not violently, deliberately. A perfect circle of black water sank inward, forming a vast pit in the sea. From it, something began to rise. Not a creature, a throne. Carved from coral, bone, and ancient steel, it emerged from the depths, carried by twisting pillars of water. And seated upon it was a being that looked both human and impossible. Skin like flowing liquid, eyes glowing like drowned stars. Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "Astriel, one of the seven, a judge of the deep court." Astriel's gaze fell on me. "You carry the ocean's breath," it said, voice echoing through every wave. "But you are not of the court." I stepped forward. "I don't want your throne." Astriel tilted its head. "The sea does not ask what you want." The water around the throne twisted into spears. Lyra raised her Tideheart, lightning flashing across her skin. "Touch him, and I'll tear your court apart." Astriel smiled. "Good. Conflict feeds the tide." The first spear flew. The ocean exploded. The war for the Black Ocean had begun. The spear of water struck like a meteor. I barely had time to react. The Tideheart flared bright blue as a wall of ocean rose in front of me, shattering the spear into mist. The shockwave ripped across Stormshore, throwing pirates and reavers alike to the ground. Astriel did not move. "You wield the tide without discipline," it said calmly, "like a child with a crown." Lyra laughed bitterly. And you wielded like a tyrant. She hurled a bolt of lightning. It wrapped around Astrael's throne, cracking coral and burning ancient runes. The sea screamed in pain. Astrael's eyes glowed brighter. So the Stormborn defies the court. The water beneath Lyra's feet turned into a snare, trying to drag her under. I slammed my hand into the sand, calling the tide to her aid. Waves exploded upward, breaking her free. "We're stronger together," I shouted. "For now," Astrael replied. "But the tide chooses only one." The clouds above twisted into a massive spiral. Thunder shook the heavens. "The trial has begun," Astrael declared. "Only one bearer will remain." The ocean rose around us, forming a colossal arena of living water. Captain Blackthorn's voice echoed faintly from the widow. "Edrin, don't let them turn you against each other." Lyra looked at me. "Looks like the sea wants us to fight." The Tideheart in my chest pulsed, unsure. And far beneath the waves, the deep court watched. The arena of water closed around us. Towering walls of living sea circled Lyra and me, cutting us off from the Crimson Widow, from Stormshore, from the world. Only the tide remained. Astrael's voice echoed from everywhere. "Two vessels, one ocean. Choose." Lyra clenched her jaw. "I won't be your pawn." "Neither will I," said. The water beneath our feet surged, trying to pull us apart. The Tideheart in my chest and the crystal in Lyra's hand glowed like twin stars, straining against each other. "You feel that?" she said. "It's trying to make us enemies." "We don't have to let it." The walls of water slammed inward, forming crushing waves aimed at us both. Lyra threw up a shield of storm. I raised a barrier of tide. The two forces collided in a blinding explosion of steam and lightning. Astrael hissed. "Defiance." Lyra met my eyes. "If we fight each other, we lose everything." I nodded. "Then we don't fight." We turned our power outward, not against each other, but against the arena itself. Our Tidehearts pulsed in perfect sync. The water walls cracked, the sea trembled, Astrael's throne rocked. "You cannot break the court," it snarled. "Watch us," Lyra said. We pushed together, and the ocean listened. The arena shattered. Walls of water exploded outward, crashing back into the open sea in towering waves. Stormshore reappeared in a blur of lightning and spray, and the Crimson Widow emerged from the mist like a wounded beast still standing. Astrael was thrown from its throne, skidding across the surface of the ocean. For the first time, a judge of the deep court looked shaken. "You dare bend the tide together?" it growled. "The ocean was never meant to be shared." Lyra stepped forward, eyes blazing. "The sea isn't a crown. It's a living thing." I felt it too. The ocean beneath us was no longer raging. It was listening. It remembered storms before kings. It remembered freedom before chains. Astrael raised its hands, summoning a wall of crushing pressure meant to tear us apart. We did not resist. We reached into the sea and pulled. A vast wave surged up behind Astrael, not violent, not wild, but absolute. It wrapped around the judge, dragging it downward. "No!" Astrael cried. "The court cannot drown!" "Everything drowns," Lyra said softly. The wave closed. Astrael was pulled beneath the surface, vanishing into the deep. The sea went quiet. The clouds began to break apart. Sunlight pierced through the storm. Captain Blackthorn's voice rang across the water. "You two just sank a god." I looked at Lyra, breathing hard, alive, still standing. The Tideheart blowed warmly, not strained, not burning, but steady, balanced. But far below, something else had noticed. The deep court had lost one of its own, and it would not stay silent. The sea was calm, too calm. After Astrael fell, the waves settled into an unnatural stillness, like a held breath that refused to release. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. Lyra stared into the water. They heard that. Who? I asked, though I already knew. The rest of the deep court. The Tideheart in my chest began to pulse slowly, not in pain, not in fear, but like something being summoned. A low sound rolled through the ocean, not thunder, a chorus. Voices layered upon voices echoing from unimaginable depths. Tidebearers. The sea darkened beneath us. Gigantic shapes shifted far below the surface. Not one, not two, but many. Ancient. Watching. Captain Blackthorn's face was pale. How many gods live down there? Lyra didn't answer. The water suddenly split in front of us, forming a vast mirror-like surface. Images appeared within it. Cities drowned, fleets shattered, a throne of black coral rising from the deepest abyss. At its center sat a figure far larger than Astrael. Its eyes opened. Lyra whispered a name I had never heard, but somehow knew. Thalrune, High Sovereign of the Deep Court. The voice that came next was not a whisper. It was the ocean itself speaking. You have slain my judge. Now you will face my will. The sea began to rise, not as a wave, as an army. The horizon vanished. Every direction became water, rising and folding into itself as if the ocean were building something vast and terrible. The Crimson Widow was lifted high on a pillar of sea, surrounded by walls of living tide. Below us, thousands of shapes moved, creatures of coral and shadow, leviathans with glowing scars, spirits bound to drowned armor. The army of the deep court. Lyra clenched her Tideheart so tightly her knuckles bled. This isn't just punishment, she said. This is conquest. A let in the water opened, a massive vertical rift stretching from the surface down into endless darkness. From it rose Thalrune. His form was enormous, half formed from abyssal stone, half from living ocean. His eyes burned like twin moons beneath the sea. The tide is not meant for mortals, he said. You will return what you stole, or the world will drown. The pressure of his presence nearly forced me to my knees, but the Tideheart held me up. No, I said. We didn't steal it. The ocean chose us. Thalrune's gaze hardened. The ocean does not choose. It is used. The waves behind him rose like a black wall, ready to erase Stormshore, the widow, everything. Lyra stepped beside me. Then you're about to learn something. The Tidehearts glowed brighter than ever, two lights against a god. And the sea was watching. The wave behind Thalrune surged forward, a wall of pure annihilation, tall enough to swallow cities. Captain Blackthorn screamed from the widow. Edrin, if that hits! I know. The Tideheart burned like a star inside my chest. Lyra's crystal answered it, lightning crawling across her skin. "We don't stop the wave," Lyra said. "We break the will behind it." Thalrune raised his massive arm, guiding the ocean like a weapon. I felt the sea resisting him, straining. "Now!" I shouted. Lyra and I reached into the tide at the same time, not forcing it, not bending it, but freeing it. The water screamed, not in pain, in rage. The colossal wave shuddered, hesitated, then turned. It crashed back into Thalrune. For the first time in eternity, the sovereign of the deep court staggered. Impossible cracks spread across his abyssal body. "You dare!" Blue and white light exploded as the tide surged against him, tearing chunks of living stone from his form. Thalrune roared, the sound ripping open the clouds. He bled. Not blood. Liquid light poured from his wounds, falling into the sea like falling stars. Lyra stared in disbelief. We hurt him." But Thalrune was not defeated. His eyes burned brighter than ever. "If I fall, the ocean will burn with me." The entire black ocean began to glow, too bright, too hot. The sea itself was being dragged toward destruction. I realized with horror. Killing him might doom everything. The Tideheart pulsed urgently. There had to be another way. The ocean was screaming, not in anger, in agony. Thalrune's power was unraveling, dragging the entire black ocean with him. Waves boiled, light burned beneath the surface. If he fell like this, everything would collapse into an endless storm of destruction. Lyra looked at me, fear in her eyes. "If he dies, the sea dies with him." "No," I whispered. "Not if the tide is free." The Tideheart was no longer just glowing. It was calling. Not to me, to the ocean. I stepped forward, ignoring the burning heat of the water beneath my feet. "Thalrune!" I shouted. "You don't have to rule the sea for it to exist." His massive form trembled. "Without the court, there is only chaos." "Then let there be living chaos," I said. "Not chains." Lyra joined me, placing her Tideheart beside mine. Two hearts, one ocean. We did not attack him. We opened ourselves. We let the tide flow through us, every wave, every current, every storm, until we were no longer commanding it. We were listening. The sea poured into the Tidehearts, and then it chose. A blinding blue light erupted from us, washing over Thalrune. The cracks in his body did not spread. They healed. But the abyssal stone fell away, piece by piece, dissolving into water. His throne of domination vanished. Thalrune shrank and shrank until he stood before us no longer as a god, but as a simple figure made of sea and light. "What have you done?" he whispered. "We freed you," Lyra said, "from being a jailer." The ocean calmed. The burning light faded. The deep court's armies dissolved into harmless waves. Thalrune fell to his knees. "The sea no longer needs kings." "No," I said softly. "It needs guardians." He looked up at us and nodded. Days later, the Crimson Widow sailed across a peaceful black ocean. No cursed waves, no ancient chains, just endless, living water. Lyra stood beside me at the bow. "So what now?" Tidebearer? I smiled. We sail. We protect. We let the sea be free. Captain Blackthorn raised a mug behind us. To Edrin Vale and Lyra Stormborn, the ones who taught the ocean how to breathe again. The crew cheered. The Tideheart pulsed warmly against my chest, no longer a weapon, but a promise. And somewhere far beneath us, the black ocean whispered, "Thank you."